What is happening, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the Somebody Like You podcast. Whether you're watching it live, whether you're watching or listening to the recording, we welcome you all. I am so pumped for round two with Beil. Our last bout at this, we were having a little bit of internet connectivity issues, but not this time. We got that all figured out. So Beil of Downsize Coaching, I'm so happy to have you on, and I want you to let the listeners know what you're about, what you're doing, and everything we need to know to get this chat started.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Well, thanks first of all for having me again, round two. So I am a certified life coach and certified organizational specialist. And really, my goal is to help people create stress-free homes. And on the surface, that sounds a lot more simple and easier said than done, but there's a lot of layers in order to really truly create a stress-free home and a lot of emotions that go into really getting your home under control and also decluttering your mind too. And I know you specialize in stress and all of that good stuff. So yeah, that's it. It took a long journey to get here and to decide that's kind of what I was going to specialize and get into. And love to kind of share a little bit more about that today and answer any questions you have and your viewers have.
I have plenty of questions.
Okay.
As I do want to touch on the journey of how you got here, I do have a little bit of like a clarification question for myself.
Sure.
Um, so downsizing, decluttering, kind of in layman's term, like explain this to me as if I'm a 10-year-old who's just like, what is that? Explain it to me
Yeah.
like I'm 10 a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. So when people usually think of decluttering is not really a term that's talked a lot about in modern days. When they usually hear the term organizing, and that's what everybody gets really excited about. And they think if they go out to Walmart and they buy some organizing bins, all of their problems are going to be solved, right? If I get that lazy Susan, I'm going to have the kitchen I've always wanted, right? The problem is people don't realize they normally 9 times out of 10, more than 9 times out of 10, they have a stuff problem, not an organizing or space problem. You need to get rid of stuff before you can organize. And it's an issue that Americans struggle with. The average American home has over 300,000 items. And if we follow Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule, we only usually use about 20% of our stuff, which means that we can really neglect or get rid of 240,000 items. Okay. So decluttering is really kind of an up and coming thing. We don't really talk about it a lot, but decluttering is the action of letting go of things that don't serve us. It has nothing to do with organizing. Organizing comes later, and that's when we can make everything pretty and functional for our everyday use. So it can really make things just as easy to put away as it is to get out. So those are two concepts that are very, very different. They go together, and a lot of people confuse them, but they could not be more different.
That's really
And then
cool.
downsizing, just to kind of take it one step further, is usually when people are moving from one home to another. They want to downsize their items if they're going to move into a smaller home. The way that my company got its name is I have the size decluttering method, which is a 4-step method to declutter your home, but you're also downsizing your items at the same time. So that's how my company got its name.
That's really neat. And I think it just doesn't work even with like the stuff like you mentioned the correlation between that and thoughts and mindfulness and all of those kind of things. And I think it's if we have that much stuff in our house, right? Over 300,000 things in our house, just thinking about the amount of thoughts, the amount of things that just filter our mind throughout the day, especially like it's just such a good representation. And I'm sure we can chat about this I don't want to call it messy. I don't want to we'll call it cluttered. The more
Mhm.
cluttered our house, probably the more cluttered our mind. So
Exactly.
and I think I would love to hear how you got from a little bit of your backstory, from a
Mhm.
very high up sales representative to executive and all of those things. You did such a good job working your way up and becoming an established sales rep, right? And then an executive. And
Yeah.
then to get to here, I'd love to know the mindful practice you got to go from there to being like, this is really important to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So two parts to that. So the first part, to answer your first question, with all of the things in our home, there's this concept that I love that changed the way that I look at the things in my house. And it's called the silent to-do list. And it's actually from Fumio Sasaki's book. Um, and it's called the silent to-do list. So basically the concept is every single item in your home is sending you a message. Okay. So your video equipment on your desk right now tells you what? Record something, right?
I'm a mess.
You're
Mine's saying you're very unorganized.
yeah, okay. Well, in that too, maybe. But the treadmill that I bought on Amazon Prime Day last year is saying, walk on me. Why aren't you using me? You said you were gonna try to, become this runner and you never used me. You maybe used me 3 times, right? So every time I look at it, it makes me feel bad about myself that I didn't become that runner that I said I was going to be. So it makes me feel like a failure that I didn't start running or walking. And it literally goes for every single item in the house. The vacuum says vacuum me, or vacuum the floor. Everything is sending us a message, and we have to really be aware of if the messages are negative or positive, and let those messages tell us what we should be doing with those items. And sometimes it is a little gray, but a lot of times it's very black and white, and that should give us a good indication whether something should stay or go. And those messages are always there, even on a subliminal level. And sometimes we can actually start avoiding the things in our home, which was happening to me a lot when I was working. And I know this kind of leads into a little bit of my story. So I started out, actually, we had met at my very first job out of college, when we worked at a payroll company, and we were partners. And, that was my whole goal. When I graduated college, I think the goal back then was to climb the corporate ladder as fast as possible and make as much money as possible so I could buy as many things as I possibly could, that would give me like a sense of status and, a sense of wholeness, right? And I think that's a lot of, that's the major goal for a lot of people. And so I started doing well, started, climbing that corporate ladder. And before I knew it, I was achieving a lot of career goals, and I was buying a lot of things, but I wasn't really actually super happy. I had all these things, but I never really reached a sense of like happiness, like true happiness, right? And I kind of
Mhm.
looked around and I'm like, what am I doing? And then I started to want to like avoid my home and, like start being out of the house more. And it just kind of got to this point where it was just like kind of like spiraling out of control. Not that I was like hoarding status, but I just didn't really want to, keep it up as much as it should have been. Um, and I also had a job where I was traveling a lot, and I was in hotels every single week. And whenever I would walk into a hotel or you'd go on vacation, how do you feel when you walk into a hotel room? Do you have like what do you feel?
You know what's funny? I'm trying to put a name to the feeling, but it is this sense of like freedom, openness, because everything
Yeah.
feels so open, tidy, and there it is. It's open. That if I could say it in one word, I feel there's
Yeah.
an openness to it.
And that's exactly right. You have like this sense of like peace. And the reason is that it's minimal in design, and there's not
Mm.
like a lot of things competing for your attention. The second you walk into your home, you got a lot of stuff, and it's all competing for your attention on a subliminal level, and it's sending you messages, right? So that's
Mhm.
why when we go on vacation, we're on vacation and we're doing other things, but on the same sense, the hotel rooms are designed in a minimalist sense where it gives you this sense of peace, right?
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of seniors, and I know you had a stint with senior living too. And every time I would design a model room, it would be minimalist in design. And every time they would walk in, they'd be like, "This is great. I want this, model room." And I'm like, "Great." So when you come, you do realize like there's only like 3 pieces of furniture in here. So you're
Mhm.
really gonna have to shave down the amount of things when you come, because you really don't need to bring it all with you. So it really it really is all minimalist in design. And IKEA, even though they're known for, their organization things, if you look at all their little sets, it's all minimalist in design. And that's why everybody's so in love with it, because they're like, I want my home to look like that. And it's, you have a stuff problem, not an organization problem.
That's such a good relation point when you talk about, because I do remember, like, as the marketing director for the community, I remember, when you're doing tours, you set up that model room, you show people, and the one thing was you might have like little trinkets, like to like for memories here and there, this and that, but it was so true that you may have a bed, um, a little tiny dresser, and then if
Yep.
you're lucky, maybe a recliner. Like it was
Yeah.
that, or substitute a recliner for like an end table or something, like depending on safety procedures,
Yeah.
and safety risks. But I never even thought about that because
Hmm.
I've done so much work, in trying to declutter my mind and meditation, mindfulness, and then I mean I can look around my room and you would not be happy with what you saw if you were looking at this room. But it is so true that when I would walk into like those model rooms, right? I could
Hmm.
just sit down and I feel like I could think. Like I could, I would go in. I'm like, okay, if I need like the next idea, who am I going to reach out to? How am I would sit in there for 10 minutes and I felt like there was peace and, or as I so elegantly put it, openness.
Hmm.
So I love that correlation.
And
When you question for you, when
yeah.
you were starting to separate yourself, or part of
Hmm.
your journey was, moving into this stage of your life, what
Hmm.
how did you get to this? How did you get to like the
Yeah.
decluttering, the organization, the stuff problem?
Yeah. So great question. So there was a major point in my journey where everything kind of shifted. About a little less than a year ago, I had my dream job. And I was, unfortunately, the organization decided to restructure some things, and I was the casualty. I was a layoff. I was laid off, and my whole world kind of got shaken upside down. So was obviously, it was kind of right before the holidays, and I figured I would take some time to really reevaluate my life and which direction I wanted things to go. And while I was doing that, I spent a lot of time in my home staring at a lot of my stuff. And I had seen the documentary Minimalism on Netflix, many times. And I always loved the concept. Like, something about it just really intrigued me. And I always liked organization. And I always had like the bins, and like you can see behind me, I have got the Calyx cubes from IKEA that are so popular. So I love the idea. And I thought, you know what? This is a great time that I can get my home under control. So I followed a bunch of YouTube influencers, top of the market, and I started trying all of these different styles of decluttering or organization. I searched organization because I thought I had an organization problem, not a stuff problem. I liked my stuff. And so I quickly learned that I did have a stuff problem, and I slowly started to try all these different methods. And the challenge was a lot of them required me to make emotional decisions. I don't know if anyone's familiar with like the Marie Kondo method. What sparks joy for you? Well, a lot of things, I'll tell you, Ben, they spark joy for me, but it didn't mean that I should keep them. Because like dresses, for example, a lot of them, like, I had happy memories in, but they don't quite fit me anymore. So we should probably just let them go. But yeah, and a lot of them just took a lot of time. I'd be looking over the space multiple times and then on a hunt for different items. So over time, I kind of just developed my own system that worked for me. And I'm like, why isn't this like an actual thing? Just I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but I get very distracted very easily. And I'm like, I need to focus on like one space at a time, focus on one item at a time. Like, I'm gonna have to make a decision on it anyway, and I need guidelines. I need non-emotional based questions to make a decision whether something should stay or go. And then at the end of the day, I don't want a huge mess behind me. I need to like focus on that space, deal with it, and then get rid of everything behind me. So that's, how the size method was born. And I tried it out with my friends, my families, and now some clients, and they love it. And it's sustainable. They can do it on their own, and it's not overwhelming, and it's been great. So I, then I decided, when I started my company, that it was just really working out great, and I don't regret it at all. I think everything happens for a reason, and it was kind of born. So everything worked out for the best.
That's so fun because I think part of whether it be a healing journey or whatever journey we're on, when we find a method that we're able to own and we're able to feel like we connect with, that we're able to start creating. For instance, like as a mental health coach, right? My
Hmm.
What I feel my job is helping people take ownership of their blueprint, of their plan, of their journey, of their path. And what I find what you did was almost
Hmm.
exactly kind of the path I took. Was I found a journey that worked for me, and I just like to put it in simple terms for people. I like to put it in relatable terms where you don't need to follow me X, Y, and Z, and you're going to get A, B, and C, or whatever, vice versa. But what you did was you took little pools from other places that you connected with, and I'm sure you tried ones that you didn't connect with. Um, and you mentioned
Yeah.
a couple things, and I know we kind of touched on it in our previous chat too, was like you said, those questions. I'm gonna have to at some
Hmm.
point, I'm gonna have to make a decision on these things.
Yeah.
Um, and I know you said you put them into three different categories and all of those things, but I wanna know what are some of those questions you ask yourself when you're deciding whether to keep, to donate, or to I don't know if it was store. I can't remember the third.
Yeah.
Um,
So you want to have your bees with you. You want to have your black trash bag. It's helpful if it's black, because that way, once it's in there, you can't see it. You don't second guess it. Then you have your donatable donation box. So it's good to have something that you can literally just donate right along with it. So that way you don't have to reuse it, and you can write a date on it. So that way, you can take it right with you. You want to have your time will tell bin. So I know we talked a little bit about this in our last chat, and I think this is really awesome for people who really struggle with, like, I don't know if I can let this go, or they're just not quite sure if they're going to need it for like the just in case items. And you keep a limit. So you have one bin, and you say, okay, once this bin is full, like, that's all the items I can save, for time will tell. And then just put it in the basement or the attic, and then you have a date on it. And if you don't come back to those items by that date, you decide to donate and let them go. And then you can also have a sell bin if you want to sell items. Okay, so those are like the tools that you always want to have with you when you're working on a project. And then the questions are great. So I like yes, no answers. So for food, a great thing is it expired? I'm actually going to be doing it's called Power Hour sessions, and one of the first things we're going to tackle is our fridge and our freezers. And is it expired? Like, you would not believe how many things are expired if you go through your fridge and your freezer today. Is this something that I have used within the last week, month, or sporadically within the last couple 6 months? If the answer is no, let it go. Let it go. Right. Um, and I usually use the time limits, because if you haven't used it yesterday, you're probably not going to use it tomorrow, right? So we usually use the time. That's usually the best thing that you can use. If there's different categories like clothing, I usually use does it fit? Do I feel great in it? If you don't, then you let it go. And if you fluctuate in weight, we usually have one bin on the side that you can keep for later, and then you can time will tell it. But other than those major ones, there might be a few other categories where we have some different questions that apply, but usually it's we use dates.
I really like that because I do a similar thing with like my thoughts, right? So
Hmm.
I sit there, and one of mine is, does this thought serve me and my purpose?
Yep.
And so it's almost, and I think there's a cool little thing there when you were talking about it. I almost wanted to like toss around the idea of giving thoughts an expiration date. Like if this
Hmm.
thought doesn't provide me momentum towards where I'm looking to go or in service of my best self, that thought has an expiration date. And once
Yeah.
that expires, put it into a bin. I just love the correlation between the decluttering and the downsizing to the mental health, because what I'm finding is you're actually really doing this. It's like a mental cleanse. Like, not to
Mhm.
mention, like, you know how some people can get, like, fixated on the organization. When they organize that, like, for me, it's folding laundry. What I feel like when I fold laundry, it's like meditating to me. I get done and all of a
Okay.
sudden I'll throw on headphones and I'll just it's the repetitive motion of doing things and just being in that moment. So when you're doing this downsizing, this decluttering, this organizing, all of these things in different steps, of course, what you're doing is just being incredibly present, because
Mm.
which is it's meditation, right? It's a form of mindfulness. So have you found that by doing this, you have found yourself more present in your daily life?
Absolutely. Now on the laundry, I mean, you can come do my laundry and I'll come help you declutter. But I, I mean, I keep a schedule for laundry, but the decluttering, absolutely. I mean, because by letting things go, you allow time to come in. And it's amazing when you're like laying down. I always use this analogy because when I used to lay down and watch some Netflix on the couch, I'd always have 1,000 things running through my mind. Like I have to do laundry, I have to do the dishes. Oh, I should really go check on XYZ. But when you are on top of everything and you have everything put away, neat and organized, those thoughts like go away. And it's like, yeah, I'm actually like watching and engaged, the show that I want to like just truly relax and watch. It's incredible. So absolutely I do find more present and just more time in general. Like it's incredible.
And that I think that's huge too, because like obviously from my standpoint, the being present, the being mindful, the meditation, or whatever
Hmm.
people's version of those things are, could be prayer. Um, I find that to be incredibly powerful, and that's what like I love that like right now it's a really good opportunity to show people like meditation and mindfulness isn't just sitting in a quiet room, legs crossed, fingers touching and saying om over and over again. These moments
Hmm.
of like you can find meditation and mindfulness and groundedness in doing dishes, doing laundry, organizing, decluttering, like so I love because like you said you went from this career fast track of just going from 0 to 100 as fast as you could, and I wanted you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're almost I feel like finding purpose, direction, and passion in
Hmm.
helping others, helping yourself, and being, like, present in these moments of what ultimately to me is mindfulness, meditation, and being present through
Yeah.
all of this.
You like so beautifully said. It allowed me for the first time to slow down. And in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie, it felt unnatural. I like felt like I had so much time. I was like, oh my gosh, this is not it didn't feel like me because I was so used to going 100 miles an hour. And like the amount, if anybody listening like knows me, they know I was a coffee addict. Like caffeine all day long, I could go 100 miles an hour. So to me, I was kind of going a little crazy. And I don't know, like organizing and decluttering, it does take time, but you're right. It does make you slow down and kind of purposefully and
Mm.
intentionally make decisions and like really get things under control and slow down. And that is very much like a beauty that if you haven't tried it, try
It
it.
and that's a gift, and I wanna ask you a little bit of the details of so for me, right, and this thing relates back to mental health, is when you are so immersed in the big picture of it, it
Hmm.
seems like there are so many things to get done all at once, and it's impossible.
Yes.
Where do you start? All of this kind of things, and what I've learned over time is take a little aspect, focus on that, and
Yes.
almost start to learn to perfect that. Almost not hyper
Yes.
fixate, but zone in a little bit. So I want to kind of touch base with what you're doing. How do you get started and prevent yourself from getting so overwhelmed about the garage, the basement, the bedrooms, the bathrooms? Where do you recommend people start and just the mindset to be in?
1000%. That is what my process is entirely about. one small space at a time, one drawer, one shelf, one bin at a time. I recommend you starting in the fridge and the freezer or your shower. Those are like the two easiest places to start. A lot of other organizing experts will tell you start with your bedroom because the way that you wake up in the morning or go to sleep at night is like the most important thing. It is, but I promise you there's a lot more emotional decisions and things that pop up, and that is like one of the worst places you can start.
Can
Start
I
where there's
ask
a lot
you
of
can
yes,
I ask you what, like, when you say emotional, I don't mean to cut you off. What,
yeah.
like, when you say a bunch of emotional decisions, I
Hmm.
think the listeners would really like to know, like, when they are going to bed and when they are looking to start, like, what are you talking about? Like, what kind of emotions are you talking about that are connected with the bedroom?
Sure. So like when you have, I know for me, I have like certain decor in my bedroom, and I used to have a lot of decor in my bedroom and too much. And when I would say, okay, and I've never done this before, I'm going to declutter my bedroom, right? I'm going to start in this corner and I'm going to work my way around. Well, if I look at this decoration, well, I love that decoration. I'm not taking that down. And then I move to the next one, next one, next one. Everything to me feels like I like it. I'm not gonna let it go or take it down or move it somewhere else because I like it. And it's really hard to start when you have an emotional attachment to
Mm,
things and items. Clothing. I mean, I know a lot of people have like three or four dressers in their room. Clothing for me even still is sometimes in a very emotional thing. There's a little bit more triggers involved when it comes to those things, so it's a little bit of a tougher place if you're not used to it. Food, there's not a lot of attachment in food, right? Because it goes bad and you can throw it away and you can go buy something else, and it's also a lot lower cost. When you are investing in dressers and decor and big pictures and technology that's in your bedroom or living room, there's usually more cost associated in those areas as well. So it's a lot more guilt of like, oh my gosh, I can't throw that away, I spent so much on that. Where
mm.
food and shampoo, it's a lot lower cost and it usually expire there. It's you less investment and it's easier to be able to let go. But you have to build up your decluttering muscles, especially when you're starting. It's not easy to just throw away things if you have an attachment, and for others, they have no problem throwing things away, and that's great. But if you're looking for a place to start and you get overwhelmed, start in smaller places where there's lower value items.
That makes a lot of sense. As you were saying, I think that's kind of why I asked, was because I think of that myself as kind of like, what do you mean attachment in a room? Because sometimes, like, I know I have my keyboard in here, my guitar in here, obviously the
Mm-hmm.
stuff I do a bunch of my work. And I was like, there is emotional attachments to those. Like, if someone's like, all right, get rid of that. You haven't used this in X amount of time, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so I know you mentioned you're doing a power hour, right? You're doing, which is
Mm-hmm.
so
I
much different
am.
than the power hour of years ago. Um, so to the person just starting out, right? Person who's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like finding inspiration from our chat. h-
Mm-hmm.
If they weren't attending your power, which I recommend everyone does, how often do you, or what time, I don't want to say limit, how long do you recommend somebody do their first session? Like, right, if they're going to sit down and be like 10 minutes, 50, or however it may be, like, what do you find works best?
Okay, so I will say I am such a believer. 5 minutes matters. You can get so much done in 5 minutes. Set a timer on your phone and say, if I can just empty the dishwasher in 5 minutes, it makes a huge difference. And every power hour session, I usually divide up people into two groups and I'll say, okay, group one, if you didn't put your laundry away or finish your dishes, do that first because it makes such an impact in the way that your kitchen feels and just the laundry upkeep, and then do that first. So 5 minutes matters. Go, just do it, get it over with, set a timer. You can get so much done. If you're feeling really energetic, go for 15 minutes and just set a timer. Um, Seriously, you can get so much done. And so the power hours, that is a group coaching session, so many people join. It's all live. You can ask live questions. If you're struggling to let something go, we talk through the reasoning, whether you should keep it or let it go. And then we have different areas on the home that we focus on, and it's just a group coaching session live. If you use code through September 15th, Power50, you can get half off your first coaching session.
Nice. That's such a
Yeah.
I love that idea too, especially because, um it just reminds me of like when I started doing like group calls, and it was like, oh, we're going to talk about anxiety, we're going to talk about depression, we're going to talk about shadow work, inner child, a bunch of different stuff. It's almost
Mhm.
like the house represents different areas of your life. So maybe someone's like, I kind of like my bedroom the way it is. I'm not looking to move that, but you know what? I feel like when I go into the bathroom, it's just cluttered. When I get out of the shower, I feel like I'm
Mhm.
stepping into mess. I know for me, right? So something I do at the end of my showers is right before I open that curtain, I kind of close my eyes and I take a breath. And I think to myself, like almost as if I'm opening the veil or the curtain to like a new life, a new me, a new timeline, whatever people would like to describe it as. And I know when that bathroom's clean, I feel like I am stepping into that version of myself that I'm envisioning of like I'm second stepping into my greatest good. I'm helping people. Because the best version of me isn't stepping into my toothbrush laying down on the thing with like old toothpaste that's now got another one on top of it. Like so, with that being said, like what do you notice? Oh, actually, I had another question pop up. When are you finished? Because I know, like with
You're
organizing,
not.
that
You're
okay.
not. It's a journey. It's a lifestyle change. And that's the way that I approach working with people too. Is you cannot lose 50 pounds overnight. And that is the stigma and the culture that organizing and decluttering has become. And honestly, it's a disservice to society, is thinking that we can just do this large purge one day and your problems are solved going forward. It's just like weight loss, right? Like, you lose 50 pounds and it's like, cool. Well, a lot of times studies show that that weight does come back, right? Clutter is the same way. You have to systematically chip away at small goals in order to achieve the larger picture, to achieve that lifestyle change. I'm not done. And like, I made a career out of this. Like, my basement still has a lot of work to get done. And it takes intention to decide before I've got an Amazon problem. Like, it takes intention before you click that buy button to run through in your head, do I need this? Is this going to serve a purpose? Does this add value to my life? And it might be yes, and then go buy it. It's not saying don't buy anything. It's being intentional with what you buy. So it's a lifestyle change and it's ongoing journey. So no, you're never done.
There's so many correlations between, just the systematic way in which you approach things to which I feel I just approach mental health. And obviously they're very, very closely linked, I feel like, especially the more after we talk.
They
And
are,
because
yeah.
what I'm learning is like I tell people, like the destination is the journey. Like you like there's no like finish line, there's none of this. And what like through what you're talking about, how it relates to, my world is what you're doing is you're just becoming very conscious of your thoughts and very intentional with your decisions. Um, so instead of just mindlessly buying 10 things on Amazon, you're now being intentional with them. Like you said, it doesn't mean don't buy things. It means what's my intention for this? And that's what I kind of in the very core of what I try to help people with is like being intentional with each process you're going through, whether it's going up to go brush your teeth. Why are you brushing your teeth? Oh, okay. Well, I'm brushing
Hmm.
my teeth to clean my gums, to, have a nice smile, to have healthier teeth, or all of these things. And when you're doing that, you're in that present moment. So when you're doing this with each, just small area of the house that you're starting and like not looking at the finish line, what you're doing is actually creating habits and a lifestyle that isn't just the decluttering of the house, it's decluttering of you and being such like a more present and grounded and intentional version of yourself.
Exactly. And I just want to kind of jump back real quick. You said there's links to what you do. So there has been multiple studies done, and the biggest one that I can relay here right now is there was UCLA did a study with a bunch of moms in California, and they found that when the moms were dealing with their belongings in their homes, there was an increased level of cortisol. And the more things that they had, the higher the level of cortisol, which is your stress hormone. So there is absolutely a direct link between your stuff and your stress levels. And even if it's on a subconscious level, like it is there. Like, divorce rates, 1 out of 4 couples get divorced because of clutter. Like, it is such a large problem, and it's not talked enough about. And I feel like it is becoming more of an up and coming, trend, and it is being more talked about, but it's just, people just don't realize it because you're just living in the same environment every day, and it's you just become accustomed to it.
Absolutely. And that's I love that site because, like you said, the direct link, that cortisol level, and direct link to anxiety, to panic, to being burnout at work, all of these things. Like you said, if you're
Yeah,
coming home and your cortisol levels are rising more than where they were at work because of the clutter and the all of the stuff in your home, that is a problem.
yeah.
And I think in this world we get caught up in, whether what the media shows us or what we're told to look at and all of those things. And we don't really get to see on the individual basis on how it's like what is affecting us. Just because we're told these things from whatever news site or social media page are being told, that's not always directly correlated with us. And like you
Right.
said, this is affecting everyone because we are all surrounded by things.
Hmm.
And when we start to discover that we have the power to decide what things we surround ourselves with, you start deciding not just things, but maybe people, maybe content you watch,
Yep.
maybe the different hobbies or the different whatever it may be. You're starting to learn to filter things out opposed to just letting everything in all at once and saying, I'll figure it out later.
Yep.
So what would you
Like,
recommend then? If like we talked about just starting
start
out, right?
today. Start today. Take take 5 minutes, pick one space, and I really want to. I try to train when I coach people to break things down as small as you possibly can. One tiny little trinket, one tiny little bin, however small you can possibly make it. Focus on one space, one item at a time, and really evaluate whether or not what message does it send you? Is it positive or negative? If it's negative, get it out, get it out, throw it away. Just
How do
get it
you
out of
listen
your
to that?
home. I'm sorry.
How do you listen to that? Because I try to work a lot with people with listening to their intuition, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the want of things, like I
Sure.
want that, versus
Sure.
so how do you, when you're asking yourself these yes
When
or
in
no's questions,
doubt,
what do you?
toss it out. If you
There it
have
is.
any doubt, you toss it out. And I know, because there's people listening that are just in case people. Yeah, like, I'm gonna save it just in case, just in case. If you're saving something for just in case, you already have your answer. Because guess what? It's probably not gonna happen. If it hasn't happened yet, it's probably not gonna happen. So you need to, when in doubt, you toss it out. And here's another good rule too. If you can replace it for less than $20 in under 20 minutes, meaning you can like hop on Amazon and replace it in under $20, throw it out. Throw it out, because you're saving it for just in case. And here's another good thing. Concept, mindset shift. So, okay, so 1 of 10 of our viewers right now is paying, statistically, is paying for a storage unit. Is that crazy, or is, I don't know, I think that's crazy. But okay, so regardless, 1 of 10 viewers is paying for a storage unit. But everybody who's listening on this call, unless they're getting a free ride from their parents, which power to them, is paying for a mortgage or their rent. With me so far? Okay.
We're here.
Everybody who's paying they're paying for space. They're paying for square footage at the end of the day. When you pay your rent or your mortgage, you're paying for square footage. You are paying to store your stuff. You're paying to store your stuff. So even if you're not paying for a actual storage unit, you're still paying to store your stuff. So if you're only realistically touching 20% of it, you're paying to store 80%. And even if you don't have that much stuff, you're still paying to store your stuff. And there is a cost to manage that stuff. And another mindset shift is consider everything that you own inventory. You have to manage it. When you ever have a flooded basement,
Yeah,
even like as a kid?
unfortunately.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What happens when you have a flooded basement?
Gotta
What
start
happens to
tossing
the
some
stuff?
things. Gotta
Yeah,
toss it.
you gotta toss it. You gotta think about all the hours that you spent. I mean, I remember as a kid, like that would happen probably once a year, once every other year. Like we would have to go through everything and we would have to dry all this stuff up, try to salvage it. That was hours spent trying and we weren't using it anyway. Our basement was essentially a storage unit that it just didn't make sense. And now as an adult, I can't even like fathom that concept anymore. And like a lot of my basement is kind of storage, for like I don't want to call it just in case because like there
I was
actually
gonna
is like a
say.
reason. Yeah, no, no, no. Like there actually is like a reason. Like it's good stuff that I use, but it's just it's insane. So even if you don't have a storage unit, you are paying to store your stuff. So if you are feeling like, oh my gosh, I have a space problem and I want a bigger house and I want an addition, just before you decide to go get bigger and better, just take a look at your stuff and really evaluate if you need it all. Because I guarantee you probably don't. You can get rid of some stuff and free up more space to, you know, create more room for the things that you really need the space for.
It makes so much sense because I grew up in a rancher, right? A one-story rancher, which
Yeah.
I'm so happy I did because I
Yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against bigger homes, but I've always looked at them
Yeah.
and thought to myself, there's so much wasted space. Like
Right.
whether I need to go to the bathroom, how far I have to walk upstairs to go do this. I've like, and it would just used to be like what do you use any of these rooms for? I can at
Yeah.
least see 4 or 5 rooms that you just don't use. And like you're saying is I've taken notice, or now I can look back and say there was always just stuff in there that was there for years that I
Yeah.
never saw them ever touch. And just thinking, like you say, you're paying for square footage, and you're often not only paying with money, you're paying with your attention, you're paying with your time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, like you were avoiding rooms and things. You're
Yep.
paying with your time and your attention, and that is almost like there's a force field there saying you're not welcome in your own home in this room because of
Yeah.
what you did. That's guilt. Like
Exactly. It's
now you're paying with guilt.
yeah. And I know, for instance, like myself before I started this whole journey, I focused on like the money. And I'm like, well, I paid a pretty penny for this dress, right? So like I
Mhm.
can't get rid of it. It's perfectly good. It's perfectly good. Like and I never even wore it. So I can't get rid of it. I never wore it. Like there's a reason I never wore it. I just never had the right occasion to wear for it. But like, am I ever going to have the right occasion to wear for it? I bought it because I was in the moment. I thought it was pretty but like it's perfectly good, right? Like I spent a lot of money on it. So I totally get the money concept, but I promise you, like every time you look at it, it makes you feel guilty and you're paying for it in so many other ways that you don't even realize. It's just not worth. Just let it go.
Oh, and I want to ask you, how did you get over that hump of kind of like I think everybody gets to a point, whether whatever journey they're on, that they have to hit a
Hmm.
point where they're just kind of like, I always say, like, you have to have a little bit of F it in your life, like, F it, like,
Yeah.
we're good. So, how did you get to the point where, like, I'm sure when you first started out, you would look at things and you'd be like, no, 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 that's staying. No, 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 that's staying.
Oh, I
At
did.
what, at what point or what trick or whatever mindset you got into where you just kind of like, this is how I'm going to do it. Was there a moment or like a feeling, or did it just kind of through the process did you get there?
Through the process, I mean, doing it day in and day out, like staring at my stuff. Because I made a few passes, and like every time I made another pass, like I got more and more brave to let things go. I think also having a friend or like an objective third party really helps too. I remember when I went through clothing, I had probably 5 or 6 bins and bags of clothing in the basement, and I had one of my friends come over and I went through each piece and she would look at me and she said, Bree, seriously? Like come on, like it's got to go. And she would tell me if it could, like be donated, or she would just tell me flat out if something was really ugly. And I'd be like, seriously? And she's like, yeah, yeah, let it go. So third party objective, that really has your best interest at heart, that can be really helpful too. And I think a lot of people are concerned that nobody really wants to help you, or it's embarrassing, but I promise you they probably have a lot of stuff too, and it can probably go both ways. You can help them, they can help you, and honestly your friends or your family, they do want the best for you.
Yep.
So I'm sure that they'd be more than willing to give you a helping hand, and get rid of some stuff.
Absolutely. Who doesn't love to tell other people that their stuff's ugly? I've been waiting
Yeah, I
years to tell you
know.
this. Like, hey, wait a second, how long have you been waiting to tell me that that dress is ugly?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and as you're talking,
So
like I kind of was developing this theory, right? And maybe
mhm.
it's not theory, but I think it's no secret that we've kind of been conditioned and trained to live in a world of fear of lack. Like we're always going to be lacking
Mm,
something. So I
yes.
think a lot of what I hear is the fear of getting rid of this means I'm going to be less of what I am now. And I'm going to want that later.
Yes.
I'm going to need that. And something I'm trying to help people with is understanding you're already living in a world of abundance. You have everything you need, you want. And it's almost kind of looking at the glass half full. It's like, okay, well, if I get rid of this and that feeling does come up, well, now it provides me space to find something more intentional that meets me at where I am now, opposed to
Mhm.
telling a story of myself 5, 7 years ago, or maybe we talk a lot of things do have emotional values of like, I remember I went through a breakup and I wore this dress or I wore this shirt
Yep.
out and someone told me I looked good. I need to keep it forever. But I am not that person anymore. That's
Right.
a
Fantasy clutter. Fantasy
yes.
clutter, and it also sparked the Maslow's hierarchy. So I'll tackle both of those real quick. Okay, so fantasy clutter is huge, and it's probably, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but a lot of the clutter in your home is probably related to this. So I actually just did a video on this the other day, and I actually personally got rid of a lot of fantasy clutter. I got rid of some ballet slippers from my college days, and it hurt because I used to be a dancer, but at the end of the day, I haven't touched them in years, and I'm not that person anymore. So fantasy clutter is defined as anything that is idealistic of who you want to be or who you used to be, but it does not serve your current state. Okay, so for instance, Ben, what hobby has really interested you that you just went out and bought everything for it under the sun that you thought you wanted to pursue but you never did?
Probably say photography.
Photography. Okay, so you went out, you bought all the expensive equipment, you bought all the camera. Let me ask, do you still have that equipment with you today?
Sitting right over there.
And let me guess, you're
Don't it
guilty
don't
about the
don't it
money you spent.
don't you dare ask me the last time I used it.
Yeah, when's the last time you used it?
It's probably been 2 years.
Okay, that's fantasy clutter.
Mhm.
And all of us have it. All of us do. And like, I know I have a friend, let's just say that she really wanted to get into gardening. And she went out, she bought all these seeds. She bought the mat things to get with the lights. I'm not a gardener. She bought all this stuff. She tried to plant all this stuff, it didn't come up. And then she's like, well, I suck at gardening. But she still kept it because she said, well, maybe one day I'll get back into it. It's fantasy clutter. You tried it, you accept it didn't work, and you let it go. You donate it to someone who can garden. So, marketing does do a really good job of telling us that, certain things will make us happier or solve certain problems. And you really just have to acknowledge that if you try something and it's not for you, if you didn't work, just let it go. It might work
And
for other
that's
people,
okay.
and that's okay, right? Um, but fantasy clutter could be future or your past. I mean, I used to have a ton of books on these shelves because I like to be perceived as someone who reads, and I do read, but when I read on my Kindle. I didn't actually like to read physical books. So I did. I let those all go. I kept a few of my favorites, but like it's okay. That's just not who I am. I like my Kindle. So fantasy clutter. The other thing that sparked in my mind was Maslow's hierarchy. And the bottom two rungs, when you're talking about security and safety and just kind of like this lack scarcity, we hold on to things, and it keeps us, all the marketing keeps us stuck in those bottom two rungs of Maslow's hierarchy. And I love to have like a visual so people can see. But the way to get up to like self actualization, like the highest part of the pyramid, is to actually like let go of those things so we can actually be more present in the community, make those relationships, and actually work on our self happiness. And I think the lack, and it probably stems back from like the depression of like needing all of those things and like having that feeling of scarcity. But we need to learn to like let go of those things. Like we live in like 2023 now, like we have access to everything at our fingertips, and it's not going away. Like we are going to be fine. We can replace anything we want within seconds, within days of going on Amazon, and it's okay. But I think that is deep rooted in our subconscious, from back in the day, that we do have like the scarcity mindset, and we always need the next best thing and to hold on to things, but we don't. It's a myth.
I know, and I think that's a mindset that I work on too. As you're starting your own business, there's this overwhelming feeling of lack of finances. Is so
Yeah.
like, where's this money going to come from? And the more you start focusing on that lack, the more lack you actually end up having.
Yes. Yes.
And you said something that I felt was really important, and you said you had a whole bookshelf of books that, just
Mm-hmm.
to be perceived as this. But the important part I found is you said I kept a couple that were my favorite, and I
I
think
did.
that's with everything, right? There's a middle ground.
Yes.
Like there's this moment, like, okay, a lot of this we'll call it junk. It may not feel like junk all the time, but you can look at things and be like, I don't need you, but these three things are really important to me. Okay, well,
Yes.
when you're starting out, it's like, well, keep those three things. They make you feel good. But in the process, like, it's not an all or nothing battle. It sounds like it's no,
No.
just get started and get this
Get
ball
started.
rolling.
And there is this awesome concept. It's have you ever heard of Getmo? Getmo?
No.
Okay. So there is this business exec, and I apologize, his name is escaping me right now, but he had this concept called Getmo, and it stands for good enough to move on. And his whole philosophy on it, and I know we're kind of short on time here, but essentially the idea is that you need to get started, and you're never going to feel ready to do really anything. Like you need to create your own motivation. Action creates motivation. So I know, and this happens a lot with organizing. Certain personalities, they have this perfectionist mindset that if I'm not going to go all in and do it perfect the first time, I'm not even going to get started. And I always was like that too. I'm like very much perfectionist mindset, but I have really been working hard on embracing this like good enough to move on. Just get started, just get the foundation, do a sweep through, a couple spaces, and just get a few things out. It's good enough to move on. Take 5 minutes. It's good enough. It's good enough to move on to the next space. And you can come back. You can, put better organization in later. I don't know. I love Dollar Tree organization bins. They're not the greatest, but you know what? It's good enough to move on until I find the right organization storage, for later. So I love that concept. And I think you just have to get started.
Oh, and it reminds me of, forgive me, I'm been obsessed with the show Suits recently, and they were talking about there's this they're like quoting a story, and they're like, there's a story of this guy that gets a flat on the side of the road, and he needs a jack to get his car up to change his tire. And as he's walking up to the house, he keeps saying to himself, they don't have a jack for me. They're probably going to I don't have enough money
Mm,
to pay them for this jack. And you're just getting all these fictitious thoughts going on. And by the time he got the courage to knock on the door open, he said, you know what, keep your freaking jack, I don't need it, and then walked away. It's all of these things that we're talking about, is like, what's going on in our mind is, if it's not going to go exactly the way we think it's going to go, we're not going to
yep.
do this at all. And all of, like, we talk about fantasy island, we talk about this fantasy world of all these things. I'm a big, my thing that I've always said myself is, take one step to create positive momentum. Don't focus
Yep.
on the goal, just a little positive momentum. It's a snowball. And
Yep.
as we've heard of the snowball effect, that's all it is take the first roll. And by week two, the snowball's this big. Like it's a
I love
process.
I love that so much. And honestly, So I know your concept of kind of like like just do it, right? You have to have that within you. And I am such a big believer. I mean, my friends would probably look at me and say I'm almost kind of borderline impulsive, but I really truly believe like you have to take risks, and you're not really going to get anywhere in life just playing it safe all the time. I I just think that's so important. You have to take the first step, and even without knowing the outcome or where it's going to go or where it's going to lead, if you don't try something, it's going to amount to nothing. Like you have to just make the phone call, make the if you want to reach out to something or you're thinking about somebody or a business deal or whatever, just it's you have to email, you have to call, you have to do something. I was thinking about something in particular there, but just you have to start. So
It is.
um, if you have 5 minutes today, right after this call, I want you to pick a space and just start decluttering and get rid of 5 things. You can do it.
And so for everyone listening, it's we're just gonna say it's that level. You have to have a healthy level of fuck it, and like it
Yes.
has like because and I think like because somebody on another social media platform, they're like, oh well, it's easy for so and so. It's just like whoa, 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 whoa. So you're starting to snowball this anger towards something. Like just say fuck it.
Yeah.
Like this is a moment for you just to say F it. Like I'm good. Like
Yes.
and like I think like I've also been called borderline impulsive with my moves across country, and like I've just picked up and left. And
Uh,
ironically, your story just relates to me because that's how it happened for me. Is I moved from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, after our time working together.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
I impulsively quit, just
I
literally
do
flipped it.
remember that.
I
Flipping a
flipped
coin.
I flipped a coin, said heads I stay, tails I
Yeah.
go. Literally landed on tails. I walked in from lunch and I quit, and they walked me out that day. And I ended up doing a bunch of things, flying to Florida, flying to Colorado. And at the time I moved to Colorado, like a month later, and the decluttering came in is I had a 2004 Pontiac Grand Am at the time, and whatever fit in the Pontiac Grand Am went with me, and everything else either went to junk or it got sold or I gave to people or anything like that. And it was honestly one of the most powerful things I've ever done because now I just realize I just need a handful of things that like make me
Yeah.
happy and make me feel like me, and all the rest of the stuff is just like now has it kind of changed since I've been living with my fiance and stuff. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
accumulated some things, but it
Right.
was those moments of fuck it, I'm out, which have
Yeah.
made me here.
Yeah. And I can relate. I mean, well, not to that degree, but I mean, I picked up and I went to Barcelona for 1 full month, and I took one giant suitcase with me. And if you can live somewhere in essentially a hotel room for 1 month, I mean, you don't need that much. Like you don't. And it really puts in perspective to how much you need on a daily basis at home. Like you don't need that much. And then I also picked up and I booked a trip to Thailand for 2.5 weeks. And then I also impulsively got a dog over the weekend, just to said, hey, I'm going to get a dog. So, like, you have to be a little impulsive, make life interesting, and take the first step. And, it's your life. You only got one. So, yeah. Just and don't let stuff hold you back either. That's another big thing. I don't remember the statistic, but um I think a lot of job promotions are not taken because of stuff that holds you back, like in fear of like making a move somewhere because they felt like they had too much stuff. So don't let stuff ever be the reason that something holds you back in life for a really awesome opportunity.
I love that. Bree Beil, I am so appreciative of round two here. And like I think, it didn't work out the first time for a reason because I feel this one like was a really genuine connection. I think we talked about so many good things. And I want to give you the
Yeah.
opportunity to let people know where they can find you, let people know what is going on. I know you mentioned about your power hours. Just take
Yeah.
a couple minutes here, let people know what you got going on and where they can find you.
Sure. So I post a lot on TikTok. It's at Downsize Coaching, pretty much on all my socials. And the power hours are every Tuesdays and Thursday weeknights. And you can go on my website at downsizecoaching.com to learn more. And yeah, that's pretty much it. All my socials are at Downsize Coaching, so you can find me on any platform.
That is awesome. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to just follow you for the past couple weeks, and I love all the things you're posting. I've been a fan of them because I'm watching them, and of course, like, this is my baby steps of just like kind of listening, being like, I'm gonna adapt that in time here. But I love what you're doing. I love, your journey to getting here, and obviously, as you continue to grow, I'd love to have you back to chat about more,
Ah,
um, update with what you got going on and all of those kind of things. Because Bree, I think what you're able to do and kind of make that correlation between decluttering your space, it just plays so much in decluttering your mind. And that is, that's my wheelhouse. And I'm just so appreciative of, the gift you're giving to people, not just for like the decluttering, but like you're helping people change their lives, which is massive.
oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the replay. I am going to catch you on the next episode, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I will catch you all later.
Thank you.